The first whisper of their return hit terror like the intake of a dying god's breath, finally reversing. An inhalation of reality itself. Vox networks stuttered. Astropaths screamed and fell silent. The palace trembled under the weight of two converging presences, one immeasurable and serene, the other tectonic and wounded. A continent's worth of iron will compressed into a single soul. Gilliman rose from the strategium table so quickly that servitors scattered. The lion halted mid-stride, senses sharpening like a blade anticipating the tremor before an earthquake. Every custodian froze. Every sister of silence lifted her head in stillness. "Father," Gilliman whispered, voice reverent, astonished, fearful. "And," the lion finished for him, "our brother." Thunder cracked across the sky, not from storm clouds, but from the fabric of real space buckling to allow entry for beings who no longer obeyed its laws. Light split the horizon in a vertical fracture, a seam opening from the heavens down to the highest spires of the palace. A ripple of gravitational displacement rolled outward. Wind reversed. Clouds folded in on themselves. Statues across the palace turned their faces toward the sky as if compelled by instinct older than the Imperium. Then, two figures emerged from the seam. The Emperor descended like a quiet verdict, light folding around him as if embarrassed to try illuminating what already defined illumination. And beside him, Perturabo, the Iron Lord. Heavy, scarred, burning with a strange, fragile newness that had no place in any myth written of him. He floated slightly behind the Emperor, as though testing the idea of being seen by sunlight again. His eyes, still red, still fierce, narrowed against the glare, disoriented by something as simple as a morning sky. The palace gasped, not with breath, but with architecture. Ancient wards flickered, adjusting to a presence they had once catalogued as traitorous. Gilliman strode forward first, armor humming, heart pounding with 1,000 tactical calculations, and one overwhelming emotional truth. He is back. The lion followed, each step heavy with memory, old rivalries, old scars, and something like cautious hope. Perturabo touched down upon the marble with a seismic thud. The stone did not crack. It bowed, almost respectfully. Silence swallowed the courtyard. Then Gilliman stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, his expression severe but not hostile. Perturabo. Perturabo stiffened. Old reflexes twitched through him. Bitterness, suspicion, anticipation of judgment. Gilliman. The word came out half-growled but steady. How convenient, Perturabo added, that the Imperium greets its prodigal son with soldiers instead of chains. Gilliman didn't rise to the barb. "If Father trusts you," he said simply, "then I will try." That shocked Perturabo more than any welcome could have. His jaw flexed and he looked away as though unable to face what he had expected never to hear. The lion stepped forward next. His presence radiated a predatory calm. Perturabo. Perturabo braced. The lion's hand moved, slowly, and rested briefly on the Iron Lord's pauldron. "Welcome home." The Iron Warrior's Primarch swallowed hard.
his throat working around a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. "Do not call it home so easily," he murmured. "It is fragile enough without curse or blessing." The Emperor stepped between them, physically, symbolically, inevitably. "He stands with us," he said. "He is one of us." The custodians shifted, some in acceptance, some in shock, some in barely restrained instinctual rejection. For a moment, the Emperor's gaze hardened, reminding all present that his will, not theirs, defined the current age. Then he turned to face the palace and raised his voice, not loud, but vast. "People of terror," he said, and the world froze as though the syllables were gravity itself. "You see your brother returned." The Voxnet carried his voice across continents,
across hive levels, through atmospheric layers, into orbit. Billions watched, billions felt. Some will fear him, some will hate him, some will never forget Olympia, or the heresy, or the iron cage.
Perturabo flinched. All terror saw it. The Emperor continued, "But I tell you this." His voice sharpened, no thunder required. "He suffers no chains of chaos. He brings no lies. He kneels to no God." Perturabo's eyes widened. The Emperor's hand came to rest upon his son's shoulder. "He stands here because he chose truth over torment." A shockwave of emotion rippled across humanity, not belief, not worship, but something new. Re-evaluation. The most dangerous and sacred act of a sentient species. The Emperor turned to Perturabo. "Speak," he said softly. Perturabo hesitated. 10,000 years of bitterness crushed against 10 minutes of fragile redemption. The Iron Lord inhaled, exhaled, spoke. His voice cracked. He began again, steadier. "I have returned." The sound carried across the planet, across orbit, across the stars. "Not as conqueror, not as traitor." He swallowed. "As son." Terror trembled. The Emperor stepped beside him, shoulders aligned, an image no chronicler of the heresy had dared imagine. "Perturabo comes home," the Emperor said, "because the Imperium he left behind is dead." Gasps, whispers, fear, hope. "And the Imperium we will build," he continued, "has room for redemption." Gilliman closed his eyes, steadying his breath. The lion nodded once, slowly. Perturabo watched them, watched the world, watched the transformation of a civilization that had once hunted him. "Then," the Iron Lord said, voice low, "give me work worthy of repair." The Emperor smiled, truly smiled. "You will rebuild the Imperium's foundation." Gilliman stiffened. The lion blinked. Perturabo froze. "Its foundation," he echoed. "Yes," the Emperor said. "Not its walls, not its engines, not its weapons." He touched Perturabo's armour right above the heart.
"It's truth," Perturabo whispered. I don't know how.
Then, the Emperor answered, we will learn together. But before Perturabo could reply, the warp shook, not in rage, not in pain, in fear. Gilliman's eyes snapped upward. The lion's hand went to his sword. Perturabo stiffened. The Emperor turned calmly. Another comes. A shadow thickened over the sun. A psychic presence filled the void like a hand closing around the solar system. Not chaotic, not loyal, not known. Gilliman whispered, "Father, who is it?" The Emperor's expression hardened. One who has no intention of redemption. The sky split open, and the next sun stepped into the incarnate era. The sky tore open with a violence that was intentional, not the chaotic rupture of demons, not the disciplined incision of imperial warp translation, but a wound carved in reality by a will determined to be seen. A psychic pressure rolled across Terra like a storm surge of knives. Air buckled. Vox networks died. Cherub servitors fell from the sky, wings spasming. 1,000,000 souls gasped in unison and felt something extinguish inside them, some quiet, instinctive light that warned predator. Perturabo stepped back a half pace, eyes narrowing. Gilliman's hands clenched. The lion lowered his stance like a hunter, preparing to face an apex monster whose scent he had long feared. The Emperor did not move. "Father," Gilliman whispered, voice low, stretched thin. "Who is it?" The Emperor's reply was calm, but even calmness has tones. This one carried steel. "My most brilliant mistake." Lightning poured from the wound in the sky, but the lightning was not light, it was memory, fractal and recursive, folding the air into patterns no mortal mind could compute. In its glow coalesced a silhouette, tall, monolithic, regal, every inch sculpted by ambition sharpened into destiny. When the figure stepped fully through the tear, Terra saw him clearly. Magnus the Red. But not the Magnus known from the heresy.
Not the broken creature shackled to Tzeentch. Not the desperate prophet begging his father to see. This Magnus was whole. His armor flowed like living script. His single cyclopean eye burned with intellect unbound. His wings, massive, shimmering, were not demonic distortions, but constructs of thought and warp-woven geometry. Magnus had not returned as a slave. He had returned as a god of his own making. The custodians, who had never flinched before demons, now stepped back. The Sisters of Silence shook visibly, though their null auras clawed at him like wild animals scratching an armoured colossus. It slowed him. It did not stop him. Magnus touched down upon the palace platform without a sound. The marble did not crack beneath him. It rearranged itself into a perfect circle. He had always loved circles. Gilliman's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "Brother." Magnus regarded him, not with hatred, not with warmth, with evaluation. "Robute," Magnus said, tone like velvet drawn over razors. "Still caged by duty." The lion stepped forward, sword in hand. "Which?" Magnus smirked. "Shadow." Then his gaze moved, slowly, inevitably, to Perturabo. A long silence. The Iron Lord glared back, fists tightening. "Say it." Magnus tilted his head. "You look small."
Perturabo's jaw twitched. Old wounds reopened, old rivalries flared. The cage had barely been extinguished, and now another brother's disdain poured salt into the scars. But then Magnus's expression softened, barely, almost imperceptibly. "You also look free," Magnus said quietly. That stunned Perturabo more than any insult. His breath caught. The two brothers stood in silent recognition of 10,000 years wasted in different prisons. Then Magnus turned to the Emperor, and the world held its breath. Magnus took a knee, not in submission, in accusation. "Do you see?" he asked softly. "I have returned unbroken, not by your hand, not by your will." He rose again, a perfect, fluid movement.
"I have surpassed the god who failed me." The Emperor said nothing. Magnus's eye blazed. "You take back your sons one by one. You cleanse them, you heal them, you remake them into your incarnate dream." His lip curled. "Do you expect me to kneel for absolution?" The Emperor's voice was firm. "No." Magnus blinked. Guilliman stiffened. Perturabo growled. "You want him to kneel?" "No," the Emperor repeated. "Because Magnus must kneel to no one." Magnus froze, not in fear, in bewilderment. The Emperor stepped closer. No threat, no aura, no divine intimidation. Just a father speaking to the son whose fall had broken him more deeply than any wound of the heresy. "Magnus," he said, "you were never meant to kneel. You were meant to stand beside me." Magnus's expression twisted, pain, fury, disbelief blending into something dangerously unstable. "Do not lie to me." His voice shook the palace. "You condemned me. You condemned Prospero. You condemned everything I ever was." The Emperor did not flinch. "I condemned your choices," he said. "I never condemned you." Magnus trembled, not with rage, with possibility. The lion stepped carefully closer, blade low. "Father, he is unstable." Magnus extended a hand and the lion was hurled back 10 meters, skidding across the marble. Guilliman moved instantly, only to freeze in place as the air around him crystallized into a prison of psychic vectors. Only Perturabo stood unmoved. "Release them," Perturabo growled. Magnus turned, eyebrow raised. "Brother, you believe you can command me now?" Perturabo didn't move. "Not command," he said. "Understand." Magnus's eye thinned. "You escaped your torment," Perturabo said. "Good. So did I. Now hear this. Father did not come to take your power." He stepped forward. "He came because he never stopped searching for you." Magnus's mask cracked, just a fraction. The Emperor stepped closer. "My son—" "No!" Magnus roared, wings flaring wide. "You do not get to claim me now." The warp trembled. Terror reeled. The Emperor raised his hand, not to defend, not to attack, but to reach. "Magnus," he said softly, "I am not here to take your power." Magnus's breath hitched. Then why are you here? Barely a whisper. Barely a boy beneath a titan's form. To ask you, the Emperor said, if you are ready to come home. Magnus staggered backward as if stabbed. Home, he whispered. Prospero is dust. No, the Emperor said quietly. Prospero lives as long as you do. Silence. Magnus shook, wings trembling. If I return, what becomes of me? The Emperor's reply was truth incarnate. You become what you choose. Magnus bowed his head. The palace fell silent. The warp winds stilled. Gilliman and the lion freed themselves from his psychic grip. Perturabo took a step back, giving him space. Magnus looked up at the Emperor. One eye, a universe of pain behind it. Then my choice is this, Magnus said. He knelt, not in fear, not in worship, not in surrender, in acceptance. I will come home, he whispered, if you will have me. The Emperor placed his hand upon Magnus's bowed head, and terror felt the incarnate era shift again. But far across the galaxy, in the darkest reaches of the eye, another Primarch felt the change. And he smiled, because his arrival would not be a return. It would be a reckoning. The instant Magnus bowed, the warp reacted as if someone had dropped a star into a still pond. The immaterium rippled outward in concentric shock waves, red for anger, blue for disbelief, gold for envy, violet for panic. Demons shrieked and dissolved, warp tides inverted. Entire regions of the Great Rift went silent as if holding their breath. And in that silence, something very old smiled. On terror, the marble beneath Magnus's knee warmed, not in fire, but in recognition, as if the very stone approved the return of a lost lineage. The Emperor's hand rested on his crimson scalp with the gentleness of a father placing his palm on an infant's fevered brow. Magnus trembled in place, wings flickering with unstable geometry as though the warp-wrought construct struggled to understand tenderness. Gilliman exhaled only when the pressure around his chest finally unravelled. The lion straightened, sword still in hand, but lowered. Perturabo looked away, jaw tight, unable to bear witnessing another brother's redemption so soon after his own. The Emperor spoke quietly. Rise, Magnus. Magnus did not rise immediately. Not from reluctance, from fear. Father, if I return, everything I built in the Eye of Terror, my libraries, my citadels, the knowledge I preserved, will remain yours, the Emperor said. Knowledge is not sin. Understanding is not heresy. Magnus's eye widened. You would let me continue my studies? Yes, the Emperor said, but not as a slave to fate, as a partner in shaping it. Magnus rose, slowly, uncertainly, as though gravity itself had changed its allegiance. The Cyclops stood tall again, the tallest of his brothers, wings retracting into fractal folds that shimmered like molten equations. But before any relief could settle, before Terra could breathe again, a voice like a rusted blade sliding across bone echoed through the warp. A laugh, deep, mocking, triumphant. Magnus stiffened. The lion snarled. Guilliman's eyes went wide. Perturabo froze in place, dread washing over him. The Emperor looked skyward. "No," Magnus whispered, horror dripping from the word. "No, not him. Not now." The warp tore open far above Terra, but this time it did not rupture. It bloomed, like a black flower made of iron and heat. A colossal figure emerged, wreathed in shadow and void fire, each step splitting reality like rotting cloth. 8 wings, not feathered, not crystalline, but broken, warped, stitched from shadow and the remnants of fallen gods, unfurled behind him. A halo of rusted metal floated around his skull, spinning slowly, grinding against itself, dripping sparks of unreality. His armour was a cathedral of pain, layered in screaming faces, serrated glyphs and black suns devouring themselves. His eyes burned white hot, like 2 dying stars. He carried no weapon. He was the weapon. Magnus staggered backward. Perturabo took an unconscious step behind the Emperor. The lion raised his sword with a snarl, fangs bared like a cornered predator. Guilliman's hearts pounded as if trying to escape his chest. The Emperor alone stood unshaken. The figure landed upon the palace with a sound like a collapsing galaxy. And then he spoke. "Father." The word dripped with venom and amusement in equal measure. Magnus whispered, "He's stronger than before." Perturabo's voice rasped, "This is wrong. This is all wrong. He should not be able to." The lion stepped forward, defiance radiating through him. "Name yourself." The Colossus grinned. "You know my name." His voice chilled the marrow of every soul on Terra. "I bear the scars of treachery, the chains of the gods, the crown of the dead War Master, and the sins of every star you failed to save." He lifted his head. His wings spread wide. His halo ignited into a burning ring of annihilation. "I am Ezekiel Abaddon, War Master of Chaos Ascendant." Guilliman blanched. "The despoiler has ascended?" Magnus whispered, shaking. "He has surpassed demonhood. He carries the echoes of the fallen Primarchs, the blessings of the Four, the hatred of the warp itself." Perturabo clenched his fists. "He's not a Primarch." "No," Magnus said, "but he has become more. They poured everything into him when Father began winning." Abaddon took a single step toward the Emperor. Every mortal within 100 kilometers collapsed. Every psychic on Terra screamed. Every statue cracked. Every sensor failed. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Abaddon," he said calmly, "this is not your place." "Oh, it is," the War Master sneered. "You reclaim your broken toys. You gather your lost sons. You preach redemption." His wings flared, dripping shadow. "But I come with truth. Chaos is not losing. It is evolving." He jabbed a clawed finger toward Perturabo. "You steal back 1 son? We make 10. He turned to Magnus. You mend one wound? We carve 1,000. He leaned close to the Emperor, close enough that starfire spilled from his jaw. You build an incarnate era? His grin stretched into something monstrous. I bring the age of ending. Magnus stepped forward. Abaddon, silence, Cyclops! A psychic lash struck Magnus across the face, sending him crashing through a pillar. Gilliman lunged, but a single gesture from the War Master froze him mid-motion, as though time itself had seized. The lion charged. Abaddon flicked a wing. The first Primarch was hurled across the courtyard, smashing into a wall of ceramite. Perturabo roared and struck. Abaddon caught his fist, held it, crushed it. I have fought angels, Abaddon whispered, and torn them apart. Then his gaze locked on the Emperor. And now, finally, I fight you. Silence. Not the absence of sound, the anticipation of catastrophe. The Emperor spoke. You cannot win. Abaddon laughed, a sound like a dying star's last howl. I don't need to win. He raised his hand. Reality cracked. Warp light bled through the fissures. Terror itself groaned. I just need to break your era. The Emperor's eyes ignited. The ground split. The sky convulsed. Magnus rose, wings flaring. The lion charged again, fury incarnate. Gilliman shattered his stasis field. Perturabo roared, iron blood dripping from his crushed hand. Abaddon smiled. Shall we begin? The incarnate era shuddered, because its greatest trial had just arrived. The moment Abaddon's challenge struck the air, terror did not simply tremble. It recoiled, as if the planet itself recognized the arrival of an extinction event wearing mortal shape. The sky folded into itself. Earthquakes rippled through bedrock older than humanity. Time warped in microfractures, flickering like candlelight caught in a hurricane. And at the center of it all, the Emperor, Abaddon, a god reborn in flesh, a monster forged from the broken flesh of gods. They stood separated by mere meters, yet the distance felt like a gulf across 10,000 years of rage. Magnus rose first, face bloodied from the psychic blow, but eyes blazing with wrath. His wings unfolded in a burst of crimson fractals, shadows twisting around him like war sigils. The lion snarled, armor cracked but courage unbroken. His sword hummed with void-cold resolve. Gilliman tore free from psychic restraint by sheer will, ceramite shredding as he moved. Perturabo flexed his crushed fist, iron bones knitting themselves back together through grim determination alone. But none moved toward Abaddon yet, because between them towered the Emperor in silence. Abaddon's lips peeled back into a cruel, triumphant smile. Look at you, he whispered. God returned, empire reawakened, sons reclaimed. His wings of shadow stretched like a canopy blotting out the sun. And yet, he leaned forward. You still bleed fear. The Emperor did not change expression. You mistake fear for purpose.
Abaddon barked a laugh. "No, I mistake you for something mortal." He lifted a clawed hand. It glowed with all 4 Chaos Powers signatures: Khorne's rage, Tzeentch's sickly brilliance, Nurgle's rot, Slanesh's shimmering hunger. The air around Terra warped into an expanding singularity of malice. "I have killed gods in the dark. Now I kill the one in the light." The Emperor raised one hand. The singularity vanished. Abaddon stiffened. "What?" The Emperor spoke, his voice a calm knife. "You speak of power." He stepped forward. "You speak of godhood." Another step. "You speak of evolution." The third step carried him to within an arm's length. "But you do not understand them." Abaddon snarled and struck. The blow was apocalyptic. Warp energy detonated across the palace like a star tearing itself apart.
Space buckled, marble vaporized, statues atomized, and the Emperor caught Abaddon's fist with 2 fingers. Time fractured. Abaddon's eyes widened, not in fear, but in disbelief. A being of destruction realizing he'd finally met a boundary. "You wield the gifts of slaves," the Emperor said softly. "I wield myself." His fingers closed. Abaddon buckled, not defeated, not dismantled, corrected. Guilliman moved first, roaring, "Now!" The spell broke. The Primarchs surged toward the War Master. Magnus unleashed a tidal wave of psychic flame, blinding and fractal, burning the air into crystalline lattices. The lion sprinted low and silent, blade angled for a killing thrust, eyes glinting with the fury of a hunter cornering a corrupted beast. Perturabo charged like an avalanche, his reconstructed fist drawn back, Iron Father's wrath carved across his face. Guilliman came with the precision of history's greatest general, a flawless vector of force, blade and mind as one. Abaddon roared, wings expanding into a shield that absorbed Magnus's flame, parried the lion's strike, redirected Guilliman's blade, and locked with Perturabo's punch in a seismic blast that cracked the palace foundations. He spun, generating a vortex of warp electricity that hurled the Primarchs back. Only the Emperor remained unmoved. Abaddon pointed at him, black fire coiling around his arm. "I carry the culmination of the gods' will. You cannot!" The Emperor's voice sliced through the words. "You are not their will." He stepped forward. "You are their excuse." Another step. "You are a weapon built from their fear." Final step. "And fear cannot command me." Abaddon roared and brought down both fists, rippling with fused god energies. The Emperor caught both with one hand. Reality froze. Even the warp paused, stunned. Abaddon strained, eyes bursting with blood, wings cracking under their own power. "You cannot hold me." "I can," the Emperor answered, "because you were built to fight a god." His eyes burned white gold. "But I am not a god." He twisted. Abaddon screamed as the divine corrupted energies inside him were wrenched sideways, fracturing into threads. Magnus staggered, feeling the backlash across the warp. "That technique! Father, you're unraveling him." "No," the Emperor said calmly. "I am giving him
a choice. Abaddon dropped to one knee, forced down not by domination but by unbearable clarity. The War Master howled as chaos surged inside him, each god fighting to keep their hooks embedded. And the Emperor bent, speaking softly, dangerously, intimately. "Do you wish to be free?" Abaddon froze. Every Primarch stared. Even the warp seemed to lean closer. For one impossible second, something flickered behind Abaddon's eyes. Doubt, longing, rage, childhood, trauma, identity, and hope. Then, a sound like the cracking of a soul split the air. "No!" The word hit like a planet killer.
Abaddon surged upward. Wings exploded into full apocalyptic span. His aura multiplied, godfire merging, reforging, consolidating. Magnus whispered in terror, "He's rejecting liberation. He's embracing all four at once."
Perturabo stared. "That's suicide."
Gilliman answered, voice grim,
"No, it's metamorphosis." The lion growled. "He means to ascend beyond demonhood." Magnus finished. "Into something formed by defiance, not by chaos." Abaddon spread his arms wide. Warp lightning arced. The ground beneath him disintegrated. A halo of black suns ignited behind him. His voice thundered. "I choose my chains. I choose my hatred. I choose me."
The Emperor's expression darkened, not with anger, but sorrow. "A tragic choice," he said. Abaddon raised his arms, gathering power equal to a god's final breath.
"But mine to make,"
he snarled. The Emperor nodded. "Then let us finish this." Abaddon launched himself forward, a living apocalypse. The Emperor stepped to meet him. The Primarchs followed. Terror held its breath. And the incarnate era entered its first true war. The clash that followed did not sound like battle. It sounded like creation tearing. Abaddon struck first, because Abaddon always struck first. An avalanche of warp-made muscle, fury, and the accumulated hatred of 10,000 years compressed into a single moment of annihilation. His wings spread behind him like the collapsing arms of a dying galaxy, each feather a shard of dead gods, each stroke a law rewritten. The Emperor met him, not as light, not as divinity, but as will. Their impact did not explode outward, it imploded. Air fled, sound fled, even colours recoiled, terrified, leaving only black and white for a heartbeat. Gilliman was thrown off his feet. The lion dug his claws into the marble, carving trenches several meters long. Magnus shielded his face, feeling the warp flinch. Perturabo locked his stance with the grim finality of an iron bastion bracing against a supernova.
Then the world came rushing back. A shockwave hurled debris across the palace, tore banners from their poles, shattered aquili carved 5,000 years prior. The sky itself rippled like stretched metal. Abaddon roared, a sound that cracked the horizon. "You cannot win, old man." The Emperor's hand closed around Abaddon's throat. "I do not intend to win." He twisted. Reality buckled. Abaddon was thrown backward, no, dragged backward, as though the Emperor had hurled him through both space and the possibility of space. The War Master crashed through a column, skidded across the courtyard, then unfurled his wings and launched himself upright with impossible speed. Gilliman lunged toward him, and Abaddon vanished. The lion's eyes widened. Abaddon reappeared behind Magnus, a warp spear forming in his hand. The lion moved first. Too late. Abaddon impaled Magnus through the shoulder. The psychic titan screamed, more in outrage than pain, as the spear exploded inside him, sending shards of warp geometry spiraling outward like a detonating fractal. His wings fluttered wildly, dimming. Magnus staggered. Abaddon grinned, bloodlust burning. One sun down. But a massive gauntlet seized him by the arm. Perturabo. His voice was a low iron snarl. "You injured my brother." Abaddon smirked. "I'll injure you next." The Iron Lord's head slammed into Abaddon's face with such force that the War Master's helm cracked. Not broke, cracked. It was the first visible damage the monster had taken. Abaddon hissed, stumbling back. Perturabo advanced like a siege engine that had just chosen its target. "You want to test yourself against the Primarch?" Perturabo growled. "Test yourself against the one you fear most." Abaddon lunged, claws raised, and the lion descended upon him like a falling star. Claws and blade struck simultaneously, one raking through warp matter, the other carving into Abaddon's torso. Abaddon roared as ichor black and warp red blood sprayed across the marble in burning drops. Gilliman followed, blades in a blur of impossible precision, slashes aimed at tendons, joints, weak points exposed by centuries of tactical mastery. Then Magnus, wounded but furious, unleashed a psychic storm shaped like a billion screaming runes. Perturabo struck next. Then Gilliman. Then the lion. 4 Primarchs, 4 different philosophies of war, 4 broken suns made whole again. Together they hammered Abaddon like a living indictment. The War Master buckled. For the first time since his ascension, he buckled. Until a pulse of black light erupted from him, blasting the Primarchs away like puppets cut from their strings. Abaddon spread his wings, panting, bleeding, grinning with feral pride. "You think numbers matter," he spat, wiping blood from his lips. "You think brotherhood matters. You think unity can fight me." He threw his head back and laughed, a horrible rising crescendo. "I am not a Primarch. I am what they would have become if they stopped pretending to be men." The Emperor's voice cut through the air. "Abaddon." The War Master froze. He turned, slowly. The Emperor walked toward him, no weapons drawn, no psychic fury unleashed. Only presence. The ground beneath his feet healed. The cracks closed. The dust lifted gently from the floor,
rising around him like a silent choir. Abaddon took a step back. Not fear, recognition. "You," Abaddon said quietly. "You truly came back, flesh and blood." "I did." "And you truly mean to rebuild the Imperium?" "Yes." "To redeem your sons?" "Yes." "To restore humanity?" "Yes." Abaddon's wings twitched, dripping molten shadow. A slow, terrible grin spread across his face. "Then I cannot allow you to live." The Emperor stopped an arm's length away. "You cannot stop me." Abaddon's smile widened. "I don't need to stop you." His aura changed. The Primarchs tensed. Gilliman shouted, "Form a shield!" They moved. Too late.
Abaddon raised both arms. The warp above Terra opened, not as a tear, as a gate. From within it, something stared back. Many things. A legion of screams. 1,000 hungry voidmaws. A shifting collective of prophecy and rot and murder and temptation. Magnus froze in terror. "That's..." Perturabo whispered. "No, not them. Not here. Not now." The lion snarled. "He's called them." Gilliman's eyes widened with dawning horror. The Dark Nine. 9 warp-born paragons. 9 demon lords fused into 9 horrifying vessels. 9 champions forged from each of the 4 gods' lost avatars. A pantheon of weapons crafted for one purpose: to kill the Emperor. Abaddon spread his wings wide, triumphant. "Slay the Father," he roared. "Break the era. End the flesh god." The Dark Nine began to descend. Terror screamed. The Emperor closed his eyes. And finally, he stopped holding back. The air itself remembered fear. When the Dark Nine descended, the warp did not roar. It hissed, as though a serpent older than stars had slithered into the cradle of humanity. The sky folded into fractal wounds. 9 silhouettes emerged, each not a creature, but a concept given anatomy, a shard of each chaos god's lost might reforged into monstrous avatars. A tower of bone and rage crowned in skulls. A silken abomination with 1,000 whispering mouths. A corpulent titan dripping gardens of disease. A spire of shifting runes and impossible angles. 5 more shapes, too terrible for sanity to fully record. They surrounded Terra like carrion gods circling a fading sun. Abaddon stood before them, laughing through blood. "The Dark Nine." His voice cracked open the air. "Give me my god-slaying war." Gilliman screamed to the Emperor, "Father, we cannot fight 9." The lion drew his sword and whispered, "We fight anyway." Magnus staggered back, bleeding warp light, whispering, "This is wrong. This is all wrong." Even the warp should not allow this. Perturabo planted his feet beside them, voice low. "If we fall here, it will not be in shame.
The Dark Nine opened their maws. 9 voices, 9 hungers, 9 apocalypses. They lunged. And the Emperor opened his eyes. No radiance, no divine flame, no theatrical shockwave. Just clarity. A clarity so absolute that the universe shuddered, as if abruptly remembering what it had forgotten. He was not light. He was not God. He was not myth. He was truth. Truth stepped forward, and chaos broke. The first of the 9, a colossus of Khorne's annihilated wrath, fell upon him like a collapsing mountain. The Emperor raised a hand. The mountain stopped, not slowed, not resisted. Stopped, as though time itself had apologized for allowing it to move. The Emperor whispered, "War is not your master." The avatar disintegrated, collapsing into dust that never touched the ground. The second, a shimmering coil of Slanesh's forbidden will, coiled around him, dripping temptation like venom. The Emperor touched its face. "Hunger is not your freedom." It let out a single wail and folded into itself until nothing remained. The third, Nurgle's swollen emissary, oozed rot upon the marble. A simple gesture from the Emperor, and it withered, turning into a dry husk that crumbled into motes of gentle ash. The fourth, Tzeentch's ever-changing monolith of paradox, unleashed a storm of impossible futures. The Emperor breathed. "Lies cannot endure me." The storm inverted, became silence, and the avatar shattered into harmless fragments of unmade prophecy. 5 remained. 5 horrors advanced. Behind the Emperor, the Primarchs rose. Guilliman, blade blazing with strategic precision. The Lion, eyes burning with hunter's fury. Magnus, shaping psychic tides into living equations. Perturabo, iron wrath incarnate. "My sons," the Emperor said. They gathered at his back. "Let us end this together." The fifth avatar,
A chittering abomination of forbidden desire, lunged and was cleaved in half by the lion's blade, roaring triumph. The sixth, a fortress beast of molten iron and screaming souls, charged and was seized mid-charge by Perturabo, who roared as he ripped the thing apart with his bare hands. The seventh, an angelic horror dripping destiny, descended. Magnus caught it mid-flight, crushed its wings with psychic force and atomized it with a single syllable. The eighth erupted in plague winds. Guilliman waded through the storm, blade glowing pure white, and executed it in a single devastating strike. Only one remained. The ninth, the largest, the oldest, the one whispered of only in the deepest vaults of forbidden arcana. The Void Paragon, a being born of the warp's fear of nothingness. It stepped forward. Reality behind it died. Stars were snuffed like candles. Space trembled. "Father," Magnus whispered, paling. That one could devour worlds." The Emperor stepped forward. "Then I will feed it truth." He raised both hands. The ninth avatar opened its abyssal maw. An ocean of darkness poured forth, oblivion incarnate.
The Emperor closed his eyes and gave it everything. Pain, failure, pride, love, sorrow, hope, humanity, truth. The void howled, convulsed, collapsed inward in agony. Light erupted, soft, clean, final. When the radiance faded, the 9th avatar was gone. The courtyard stood silent. The wind returned. Abaddon staggered backward, panting, his wings dim. His aura flickered. His triumph died. His certainty shattered.
"No," he rasped. "No. No. They were the Dark Nine. They were
mistakes," the Emperor said gently. Abaddon roared and swung with all the strength left to him. The Emperor did not block. He stepped forward and placed a hand on Abaddon's chest. "Ezekiel," he said softly, "lay down your hate." Abaddon screamed, a scream full of 10,000 years of being used, abandoned, reshaped, betrayed.
"I can't be free," the Emperor whispered. "You can." Abaddon's wings cracked. His armor split. The 4 gods howled through him. He trembled, torn between annihilation and release. "Choose," the Emperor said. Abaddon gasped. Sweat and blood and warp ichor dripped. His face crumpled. "I don't know how." The Emperor's voice was a whisper of dawn. "I will show you." Abaddon broke, collapsed, screamed. And the Emperor caught him, like a father catching a falling child. The War Master convulsed, and the corruption poured out of him in black rivers that evaporated into harmless shadow. When it finished, when Abaddon lay trembling, mortal, shaking, the Emperor knelt beside him and spoke the final words. "Your war is over." Abaddon wept, a sound terror had never heard, a sound the warp feared, a sound of a man who had forgotten he was one. The Primarchs gathered. The sky cleared. The warp receded. Terror breathed again. Gilliman asked softly, "Father, what now?" The Emperor stood, Abaddon at his feet, Magnus at his right, Perturabo at his left, the lion standing guard. He looked to the horizon. "The incarnate era," he said, "has only begun." He turned to his sons. "All of you," he offered his hand. "Walk with me." Magnus bowed his head. Perturabo exhaled shakily. The lion nodded once. Gilliman smiled faintly. Abaddon looked up, broken, hopeful. And the Emperor, not a god, not a corpse, not a myth, but a father reborn in flesh, whispered the final decree of the new age. Humanity rises. And terror rose with him.